JavaScript array methods in a few minutes or less. In today's video, we're going to be covering map. The map array method in JavaScript is used to iterate over each element in an array and apply a provided callback function for each element in said array, resulting in a new array of the same exact length where each element in the new array is a result of applying that callback function. In other words, it maps each element in said array to a new value based on the function that we, the developer, provided. But Des, before we look at any code, here are a few quick facts about map. Number one, transformation. The map method transforms each element of an array using a provided function. It applies the function to each element and creates a new array with the transformed values. So that's that mapping effect in action. Number two, non-destructive. The original array remains unchanged when using map. It returns a new array without modifying the original one. So using map is safe. It's a safe way to derive a new set of values. Number three, one-to-one mapping. Each element in the original array corresponds to exactly one element in the new array that's created by map. The one-to-one relationship ensures that the output array has the same length as the input array. So both arrays, the input array and the output array, will have the same exact length. It's just the new array that map returns has the transformed values. And speaking of those values, number four, the return values. The function provided to map should return the desired value for each element. These returned values are collected to form the new array. Pretty straightforward. All right, devs, let's look at some code. Okay, so we have an array here, const numbers, which just equals an array of numbers 1 to 5. Pretty straightforward. So let's say for whatever reason you want to take every element in numbers and double it, or in other words, multiply it by 2. So since we have reference to numbers here, let's take numbers and type that down here. We're going to hit numbers with our map array method. And like mentioned before, map of course takes that callback function. So let's type out our function skeleton here. So we're going to take numbers, we're going to map over it, but we're going to map over what? What do we want to call this? So this is our variable. This is what we come up with. We name this, and we have numbers here, which is plural. So why don't we just call it number, singular? So we'll take numbers, we're going to map over it, and for each number in map, do what? Well, now that we have reference to number here, we can use that down in the body of our function. So let's take number, and for each element in numbers, multiply it by 2. And then of course we want to return this. And while we're at it, why don't we just take reference to everything we have here and assign it to a variable so we have reference to it. So we can say const doubled numbers. Now let's log doubled numbers to the console. And there we have it. We can see the preview here, but let's open that up and we get, of course, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, which is the doubled amount of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 multiplied by 2. So our code is working properly. Now map is non-destructive, remember, so we haven't mutated or changed numbers. And just to make sure, we can take our console.log, duplicate that here, and let's just log numbers to the console. And we still have our original array. Our original array is still intact. We still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the new array that's returned to us from map where everything is doubled. Let's clear that out. Now we're using arrow functions here, and with arrow functions we can do the shorthand method, or what's otherwise called as concise syntax. Let's utilize the concise syntax that arrow functions give us so our code can look a little bit cleaner and we can get everything on one line. So to do that, we can start by dropping our return keyword, we can get rid of our curly braces, bump everything up on the one line, get rid of that extra semicolon. And because we only have one parameter and only one parameter, we can actually get rid of the parentheses here as well. And you can see we still have the same result, except we have far less code, 2 less lines of code, and everything is on one line. It looks really nice. So that was pretty simple. Let's go ahead and take a look at another example. All right, so in this example, we're working with objects. We have the array students, which is just an array of objects, and each object in that array is a student. They each have an ID, a name, and a grade. David's not doing too hot. He's currently failing the class, but let's say for whatever reason he gets his act together and brings his grade up to an A. So let's take students and type that down here. Hit it with our map method. Map, as you already know, takes that callback function. So we want to take students, map over it, but map over what? What do we want to call this? Well, we have students, so why don't we just call this student, singular. So we now have reference to student here, our variable that we can use down in the body of our function. And we want to map over the students array, get David, and change his grade to an A. Well, how can we do that? We can do that with a little bit of light conditional logic. So we can use a simple if-else block, or if-else statement, as some people call it. So let's just build that out now. So if something is true, do something. Else or otherwise, do something else. Well, we know we want to change David's grade, so why don't we tap into his name key here. If the student.name, so if the student's name equals the string of David, do something. What do we want it to do? Well, we want to return something, but return what? Well, we're working with objects here. So let's return an object that includes all the students, but only change the grade of the student whose name equals David. So basically, if this if check renders true, we're going to return all the students in our array, but only change the grade of the one who matches this check to an A. Otherwise, or else, if this is false, just return student. Now, like before, let's just take everything here and store it in a variable so we have reference to it. So we'll do const, and we'll just call this updated students. So now that we have our variable and reference to updated students, let's log that to the console and see what we get. We have 4 items, that's looking good. Let's open that up, and David now has an A, which is exactly what we wanted. Now, this is called the spread operator. If you're not familiar with this syntax, basically what the spread operator does is it's gonna take the student, which is this variable here, which is used as our placeholder while we're mapping over the array. And this spread operator basically takes everything in our array and spreads it out. It unpacks it. So this special operator here is just basically going to take everything in our array and spread it out here in this object, but only change the grade of the student who meets the condition here to an A. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, obviously with programming, there's more than one way to do things, and we could find ourselves in a scenario where there's more than one David in the class. And typically in a real world application, you want to tap into these index items of the array via their ID, since that is the main unique identifier for each object. So instead of doing our conditional check here via the string of their name, we can just say ID and then change the ID to 4 to get David specifically out of that array and change his grade. And you can see we still get the same result. His grade is still an A, but we're using the ID instead of their name. And that's about it. That does it for map. Hopefully those examples helped you with your understanding of the map array method. It's really powerful, it's super common, especially if you're a React developer or you're learning React, you're gonna see map a lot, all over the place. So hopefully this video helps. So if you enjoyed this and you got some value out of this and you're feeling chatty, definitely leave a comment, click that like button, but I will see you all in the next one. And as always, if you wanna support the channel, all you have to do is